My name's Don.
And I'm Peter.
And we are two plebs talking about... California.
This week in the DPRC.
And, sometimes California makes such ridiculous policy decisions that it's just hilariously awesome. And sometimes California gets those decisions sort of made for them, and then California's output is even more hilarious.
It's like it really can be turned into its own comedy special.
We kind of have.
We have, haven't we?
So, 2010-ish, somebody sued the state of California because all of our prisons were too terrible of condition to live in, or something.
Okay.
And overcrowded. And so, you may remember, as many people might, because it was national news at the time, that we were just releasing murderers.
Yes.
And rapists.
But I thought we were just releasing the non-violent criminals.
No. So I think that was everybody's hope. And
so that's what we were fed by the media.
No. Okay, some of the time. But when the suit was going through, that was the plan anyway, right?
That was the plan.
We're going to release all the non-violent offenders, and, if you had a gram of pot, who cares, right?
Right.
Now, we've been over that before, and why it is that there are so many people in prison for just having some pot on them. But none of that mattered. Because, something, just let people out of jail because there should be no crime.
Right.
Well, all of that made its way through, and we released a bunch of murderers and rapists because they didn't have mandatory minimums. And turns out all the guys that were in there for having a joint on them had mandatory minimums, and so they're still there,
right,
or have been released normally at this point. And subsequently, California has been doing other things to reduce our prison population.
Okay.
Which is to say that we wrote a couple of laws that said, well, look, if you're not a specific category of offender, you're going to spend your prison sentence in county jail.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was as good of a plan as you think. Because it turns out that county jails are, they're kind of there for, awaiting trial.
Right.
In pretrial confinement kind of ways.
They're temporary confinement.
The drunk tank.
Right. They're not situated for long-term stay.
Yeah. And somehow that didn't matter when we decided to do this. And so, spectacular, amazing things have been coming to pass.
Yeah, like?
Well, a bunch of prisons are reporting that their violence against guards are up about, 90%.
Okay.
Yeah. Who would have thought? Because these were all temporary institutions, we'll say, they didn't have any long-term health care.
Right.
Mental health care. And
sufficient beds.
Right. A little bit of a problem there, too.
Something above and beyond a bologna sandwich and a chug of milk.
Well, and so that got taken care of fairly early, seemingly.
Okay.
Right. And so, it's just everything else. And because they're pretrial confinement, they all have all of these policies about if you're a problem, we just throw you in solitary, and those are all hominis dominus by the state, right? Because, well, you're only going to be here, a week? Who cares? Well, because that's the only way they have to deal with things, they have, working on violating Supreme Court precedent quantity of time in solitary confinement. Because, it's the only thing we can do. Solitary.
Right. It's our only option.
Because if you were in prison, they would just transfer you to a higher security cell block, but you're in county lockup, so they can't.
No, the next level, highest security, is solitary. That's all they got.
You got it, right? There's no, you have shackles on all the time kind of thing, or, put the dangerous people over there, or any of the things that, prisons are designed for.
Right.
And so, you've got people, and I'm not kidding, who get arrested, get convicted, are clearly career criminals because they know very well where it is that they want to go, who are like, can I go to prison instead of county lockup, please?
Really?
Yeah. Because prisons, we have been doing all these things at the federal level and at state level for, since like the 60s. You know, it's a human right that you have internet and a library and a pool table. And
access to phones.
Conjugal visits. I don't know.
I don't
know if that's true. It's a joke.
I don't think we do that one.
But
one thing I do know from because I watch random videos, they have free access to phones in prison.
Yeah, a lot.
Whereas in county, you're stuck in a cell. You don't have free access to a phone.
Don't have any of this.
You got nothing. There's no TV. You're sitting on a bench one.
Yeah, basically, right? And so, turns out that we have made prison so cushy that when we just started pushing all of these people into county lockup, they were like, wow, lockup is terrible.
Yeah, I don't want to be here. Send me to prison.
Right. And so California has graduated to seemingly having an actual prison entirely by accident.
Entirely by accident. Because prison is supposed to be a place you don't want to be. It's supposed to be the deterrent.
Right?
Don't make it, a 5-star Hilton.
You would think. But because we spent all those years suing all the prison systems everywhere, and California got their, you're overcrowded, so fix it. We have now actually created that again, entirely by accident. So, of course, what are we doing? We're going to fix that now, right?
Of course.
Now, don't get me wrong. No one has a plan to fix it.
No, we're going to fix it. We're going to make it comfortable. We're going to make it cushy. We're going to give them TVs and internet and free access to phones, everything that you get in prison.
Sounds so ridiculous when you say it that way. And yet, this is basically what they're arguing for, but here's the problem. County lockups are run by the county.
Right.
Nobody's got money for that.
County no.
And right, this was the point of prisons, is like, we got a whole state full of people, and so you could, if we need to do something to a prison system, it's only, 6 buildings max, right?
Right, and the county doesn't do it, the state does it.
Right.
So the state...
And they tend to get federal funding for it.
So now the counties are like, if you want us to upgrade to state standards for prison, we need that state money.
Right, but where's that money going to come from? And keep in mind, before you answer, there's something like 54 counties in this state.
Yeah.
And, by the way, Los Angeles is holding something like, at absolute minimum, at any given time in county lockup, 2,700 people.
Okay.
Which doesn't sound like a lot, but apparently it was a lockup designed for something like 500. So, oops.
Cordwood. Stacked like freaking cordwood.
Right. Which, by the way, everyone that is publishing numbers is going like, that overcrowding thing, it's
happening in county too. I mean, we're at the point where our only option is to set them up like the old slave barges.
Probably, right? And no one is saying that because no one, of course, wants to go to prison.
Oh, no.
Right? Well, none of the guards do, right?
Right.
I'm sure all of the inmates are like, can I go to prison, please?
Well, that's what it sounds like.
Which, by the way, in the world of weird incentive structures, is this time to shank your neighbor? That way you can go to actual federal prison as opposed to California.
Well, maybe that's their method for population control. If you want to upgrade to prison, get to it.
Get to sharpening that toothbrush.
Less people got to go to prison now.
Well, more people got to go to prison, but, less people in county lockup.
Right.
And since the policy apparently at the federal prison level is if you're a murderer, get out. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe this is our new crime control bill.
Incentivize them to just kill each other.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Well,
it's a self-correcting problem at that point in time.
I don't know if it makes any more or less sense than what we're doing here. And by the way, this isn't, when I say we have people asking to go, the article in question has one guy that they detail, but there's evidently a lot of them.
Right.
Who are like, no, I've been to county lockup since this all happened. Send me to prison, please. But they can't, because SCOTUS said you're overcrowded.
Right.
Because California. Because we don't build prisons here, ever.
No.
For any reason, right? I think the last one was built in the 50s or something like that.
It sounds like we need to build a few more.
Probably. But then we'd have to agree that, there's a need for prisons, and we're not going to do that.
Oh, because they're all good boys and didn't do nothing.
Exactly.
They're all just victims to the system, and we need to let them out.
Something Hawaii racism. And by the way, because of course it is, that's brought up here too. Well, they're disproportionately minorities.
Okay.
Something racism.
I know, something racism. It couldn't be the fact that they decided to commit a crime, got caught, and put in prison because of it.
No.
That can't be the reason.
No, it has to be racism.
It has to be racism. I mean, that means the cops picked them up for no good reason whatsoever and fabricated evidence. No people died, and but they're still being sent to prison for murder.
Right.
No one died.
Exactly. There's no body, and stop pointing at that body.
Right.
But hey, look, this isn't the only racism we have in this state.
It's not?
No, we have all of the racism.
No, we know. We're California. We're not racist here.
But we do, and we're going to fix it.
Okay, what's this racism, and how are we fixing it?
Well, you see, black women have dreadlocks, and that's considered unprofessional. So we're going to make it illegal to discriminate based on dreadlocks.
So we now have a state-sanctioned hairstyle.
Well, to be fair, we have a few. Because there's also braids and weaves and
What's
hair
wrong with...
extensions.
Okay, okay, what's the argument here? Why are dreadlocks supposed to be a protected hairstyle?
Well, because you have to understand that styles of professional dress are very European and colonial. And I'm not making this up.
I know you're not making this up.
I'm not exaggerating for the purpose of amusement. This is the lawmaker's own argument.
Okay, this is California. We don't exaggerate around here.
Well, I don't know about that. But because of this, what we need to do is protect the weave. Just like, what's-his-name's sister. Don't burn our weave down. We need our weave.
Okay. Well, I thought the whole purpose for the weave was so they did achieve those more, what is perceived as a professional hairstyle.
Well,
weaves are not usually curlied up and dreaded locked. They're usually nice and straight.
Yeah. But even then, you may run into some sort of discrimination because froze, and I'm not kidding, apparently there's Supreme Court precedent about froze, so that's nice. Yeah, that already happened.
Okay.
But, dreadlocks and braids and weaves, they may not fit a professional environment, and so if anything happens to you because of your hairstyle, and by the way, it lists those, but is not limited to those, so I don't know what that means.
I've never heard of anybody being discriminated against about a braid.
Well,
unless they're talking about a very specific type of braid.
Could be.
Which I've still never seen any discrimination against.
Well, just because you haven't seen it
doesn't mean it hasn't happened. I'm well aware of that.
And you must understand.
Just because I've never seen a Sasquatch doesn't mean they don't exist.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's probably at about the same rate that this is happening, too. But no less, we must protect the weave, Peter.
All right. I don't see a problem with the weave. I haven't seen people being booted out anywhere or discriminated against for having a weave.
Okay, fine. We need to protect the dreadlocks, Peter.
Why?
Because it's just part of the culture of being black, and so discriminating against dreadlocks is the new Jim Crow.
I'm sorry, it's generally a relatively messy and it doesn't have a kept appearance.
Yeah.
Most fros, as far as I would argue, do look kept.
Yeah, well,
they do look nice.
You might argue that all you want. That, for example, just twisting your dirty hair until you get dreadlocks, and I know someone's going to be in the comment section, don't you wash it with that, don't soap because it doesn't have a detangler. Yeah, I got it. But
right.
No less, you know, those locks are we're using them regardless of whether or not they look messy. Not to establish a professional environment, but to make sure that there are no black people in the workforce. Because, again, this is the new Jim Crow.
This is the new Jim Crow, that we set a standard that everyone needs to adhere to due to, the happenstance of genetics. Some people happen to have more problem meeting that standard.
Okay.
So we need to protect them and allow them an exemption from the standard?
Well, I mean, that's sort of the argument, I guess.
That is the argument.
Well, no, because let's be clear about this. If I, Cracker McCrackerson, had, I don't know, a mohawk, that's not listed as protected.
No, that's cultural appropriation. You shouldn't be taking from the Indians.
Yeah, it could be. But
so you're already a bad person for doing that.
If they had a mohawk, that's not necessarily protected. And look, I bring up me as a mohawk not so much because I have a good mohawk set of hair or anything, but because that pulling back up here is starting to make it look like one anyway.
Right.
Just a thinned out one.
Right.
So,
I mean, at this point in time, why not just say that you can't discriminate based on hair? I mean, we'll see a lot more liberty spikes.
Well, yeah, but then you would have all these unprofessional hairstyles, and it wouldn't be about race.
It's not about race to begin with. It's just a subjective impression of what is and is not professional. That perception changes over the years. Men having ponytails used to be considered not appropriate. They get away with it nowadays.
Yeah, sure. And look, that's exactly the kind of thing we're talking about. Is Cracker McCrackerson can have a ponytail, but Tyrone can't have dreadlocks, and that is evidence of racism.
No, that's evidence of cultural shifts. One hasn't caught up. People apparently don't believe dreadlocks to be looking professional.
You don't want a lawyer with dreads? What's wrong with you, Peter?
I want a lawyer who's competent. Part of that would be appearance, though.
Well,
the presentation of self is necessary in court to be taken seriously.
That's just foolish.
I'm sorry.
You have to know that a guy who can't keep his hair in order is good at everything else. You have to know this.
All right. That's also claiming that somebody who's like 450, 500 pounds it would be like a world champion level fighter.
Could be. I mean,
if it's... Well, you're right. Sumo would be good for him.
Right. See? There you go. Disproven Peeler's a racist.
No. It proves that there's an appropriate place for things.
Is there?
A 400-pound fighter should probably go into sumo.
Yeah.
To be specified, a 400-pound fat guy should probably go into sumo. If he's 400 pounds and lean muscle, by all means, put him into UFC.
Sure. And look, okay, all well and good, but what does any of this have to do with dreads? Because
that it's all a matter of perception of what is or is not acceptable.
See,
they're trying to force people to accept something they already don't accept.
Exactly.
And that's so, tyranny.
If you... Well, I mean,
it's perfect for the DPRC.